the host of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive Show on YouTube. Colonel Davis, let's begin with, we're now into the fourth week of this operation, this military operation on the part of the Israelis, and every few days it feels like, okay, now it's about to get more intense, and then it backs off. And I feel like we've gone through that again this weekend. Saturday really felt like we were seeing the ground movement happening, we're seeing the strikes from the air and the sea, and then today, less emphasis on that. How are you reading how the Israelis are moving forward in their operations?
I think that there was some clues in Netanyahu's war speech yesterday where he basically laid out that their plan is to completely obliterate the Hamas group. And he also expressly said that this is going to take a long time. He laid the groundwork that they don't expect anything fast. So I don't expect there to be some kind of a big, all-out launch of an invasion like you might have seen like Normandy or something where there's this heavy onslaught. But what I think we've seen so far is that Israel has moved troops in there and they're basically establishing a perimeter and a base of operations from within Gaza. And then I think potentially within, a day or two, then they're going to start a methodical move to just move through Gaza Strip because their objective laid out by Netanyahu is the complete eradication of Hamas, which means they have to go building by building, room by room to clear the thing or destroy them. And unfortunately, it looks like that's one of the methods that they're trying to use. So I think that this is going to be a long and methodical operation, but there's going to have to come that point to where they have close quarters combat, man on man in the streets. And that's going to be the worst time of it all, I'm afraid.
When we say long, that this is going to be a long war, certainly Netanyahu said that. We've heard so many analysts say that as well. What does long mean? Are we looking at another Afghanistan here?
No, I don't think it's going to last. I don't think it can last that long just because Hamas is not going to have the capacity to maintain that. The only reason Afghanistan lasted that long is because they had a nonstop pipeline from Pakistan where they could get an ever-ending supply of ammunition and personnel and all that. Hamas is hermetically sealed in the Gaza Strip. They can't get any more personnel or equipment. Whatever they've got stored is what they've got. They're not going to get resupplied. But they are, from all reports, they have put a lot of stockpile of stuff in there so that, water, fuel, ammunition, all the things that will sustain them for a long time because they expect it to be cut off. But they are committed to this, and I don't think that there's any chance that any of them would ever give up. So you can see from similar battles that have been fought, like in Bakhmut, took 9 months in Russia and Ukraine. In the Battle of Fallujah in 2004, that took a month and a half. It was much, much smaller than here. And then you had Raqqa and Mosul in Iraq and Syria were very similar size, very similar operation, also sealed off before. Those took between 4 and 9 months, depending on what was going on. So I think this is probably at minimum going to last through the end of the year and possibly longer.
Colonel Davis, let's talk about that tunnel system. Vast network of basically a subterranean world that's been created down there. Are the Israelis prepared for what might lie beneath them?
Well, they're certainly prepared. I mean, they're mentally prepared. They've done this before. They've had tunnel clearing operations in some of the previous Gaza wars that they fought. But the thing about Hamas is that it's as soon as you destroy one, they'll build it right back, or they'll build another one. So however many were destroyed in the 2021 engagement, they've almost all been replaced. And of course, many of them have been destroyed by these bunker buster bombs you've been seeing where it just eradicates entire apartment buildings above it. But the thing is that Hamas, number one, the Israelis aren't going to be able to get them all. And then those that they do get, Hamas is very skilled, and you can count on that they'll digging more tunnels even right now. So they're not going to get rid of them from the air. They're going to have to go in there on the ground and eradicate those.
Can I talk to you about something that's made news again today, which is the issue of medical facilities? There are reports that the Al-Quds hospital in Gaza City, the area around it might have been struck. There were certainly warnings coming from the Palestinian Red Crescent Society that people need to vacate that area. This, of course, follows days after the Al-Shifa hospital and all the controversy around that, whether in fact it's a headquarters for Hamas or not. And the emotional spark that it causes for so many people when it's the idea of a hospital being hit. From a military perspective, walk me through how you're watching those particular parts of the story.
Yeah, look, I take, I won't say take at face value, but based on what we know about Hamas and how they care so little for life, anyone's life, theirs, Israelis or the Palestinians, I almost expect that they're using the hospitals for headquarters underneath. I believe that those reports are likely true, but here's the big problem. Israel can't say, oh, because there's military there, we can destroy it, because you can't. Unfortunately, that's just something that's going to have to be dealt with, because, in fact, even according to the laws of land warfare, if the enemy uses a building, it becomes a legitimate target. You can take it out. But when you're talking about a hospital, then you have different rules, and you can't just take it down because the enemy's using it. And even more so, on a practical level, look, Israel can't afford to actually target a hospital. Now, the last time, it looks like it was probably a misfired Hamas rocket, so it wasn't Israel, though they got blamed for a lot of it. But if it actually is Israel, then it could cause a firestorm in the Middle East. And I'm not talking about just protests. I mean, this could actually cause many in the Arab world to actively fight against Israel. And they cannot afford that. So even if they don't want to leave those there, I mean, I would advise them not to target the hospital no matter what, and just accept that's just the cost of doing business, because it is far more damaging to Israel to attack the hospital, even if they took them out, than it is to not attack it.
Before I let you go, sir, let me ask you about the one thing that always gets lost in these conversations, which is, of course, the civilian populations. So we've got more than 200 people, including a number of Americans, who are being held hostage by Hamas in Gaza. And then you have thousands of people in Gaza who have nowhere to flee, including, again, lots of American citizens who are stuck in Gaza, lots of Canadian citizens stuck there too. Right. What happens to these people in the midst of the war between the IDF and Hamas militants?
Again, you can talk the morality of it, and I do all the time. And I think Israel has a moral obligation to make sure that civil population is taken care of in this war. I think it's a high moral requirement, but there's also a very practical requirement underneath it. Israel cannot afford to let large numbers of civilian people die. And especially if you're talking dying of hunger, dying of thirst, dying of malnutrition and diseases, which are now running rampant through the area already. Israel can't afford that. Again, the same reason they can't afford the Arab street, which is already up in arms. And you saw just yesterday with Erdogan in Turkey, more than 1 million people were screaming that, yes, we want to go help Hamas, and that it's Israel who's the terrorist, not Hamas. They can't afford to let that go any further. And then also, as you pointed out there, I think it's critical, and something I really am elevating a lot, is that there's 600 American citizens and I think 1,700 foreign passport holders that are right there at the Rafah gate, and for several reasons, and none of them are good. None of them are being allowed out, and I think that is horrible. That's a stain on us as much as on Israel. Those people need to be let out immediately.